Hi, I'm Kiri. This is the first in the Backyard in a Box series that will help you learn how to establish sustainable practices in your childcare centre, preschool or nursery. In this video, I will give you a short introduction into the equipment you will need to establish a worm farm and maintain it ongoing. The EcoKids Worm Farm Pack contains everything you need to establish your own worm farm. I'll tell you where you can purchase these products later. I have a bucket, 1,000 live worms, some gardening gloves, hand tools, a bedding block, watering can, a bag of soil, a worm blanket, and of course the worm farm. Firstly, find a cool position outside that receives morning sun but is relatively shaded throughout most of the day. The surface should be as level and as close to the kitchen as possible. Preparing the bedding block is the first step. The bedding block is made up of compacted coconut husk and needs to be soaked in water so it can be softened and will expand before use. Take the bucket and fill halfway with water. Place the bedding block in the water and leave for 15 minutes. While we wait for the bedding block to expand, we will assemble the worm farm. Take the bottom tray and attach the four legs. Attach the tap to the bottom tray by inserting it through the hole in the bottom and tightening with the nut on the inside. It doesn't need to be too tight, just tight enough to be secure and watertight. This is where the liquid will collect, and the tap allows you to drain easily. The middle tray is what we call the working tray. This is where the worms live, eat and breed. It has holes in the bottom to allow oxygen to circulate through the entire worm farm. It also allows water to drain and collect in the bottom tray. After the tap is attached, you can sit the middle tray inside the bottom tray, fitting snugly inside the lip of the tray. Let's take a look at how the bedding block is expanding. Oh, it looks good! Squeeze out some of the water before spreading the block over the base, being sure to cover the entire area. Place the top tray inside the middle tray. This tray also has holes in the bottom to encourage the flow of oxygen. It also allows water to flow through, collecting in the bottom. This is also a working tray, and the worms will live, eat and breed here initially. Fold and place the cardboard in the bottom of the top tray. Take the rest of the bedding block and line the bottom of the tray, making sure to cover it completely and evenly. Take the bag of soil and spread evenly over the bedding. This provides the initial base for the worms to work in. The worms will eventually consume this bedding and the cardboard base. Evenly spread the worms over the top of this bedding. Try to do this quickly, as worms do not like direct sunlight. Place 2 cups of food scraps on half of the top tray. It's important not to cover the entire top tray with organic matter, as this can affect the flow of oxygen to the worms. The food scraps should be no bigger than a 50-cent piece. Cover the worms and the kitchen scraps with the worm blanket. This will keep the worms warm and moist. This blanket needs to be replaced every 3 months, as the worms will eat this too. Place the lid on the worm farm and let the worms settle for 1 to 2 days. Only feed the worms as much as they can eat. A general rule of thumb is to feed every 3rd day. Ensure food scraps cover no more than a 2 cm depth on half of the surface. We place food scraps under the worm blanket. Each time you feed your worms, sprinkle some garden soil on top of the scraps before putting the worm blanket back on. Avoid any meat, lemons, onions and dairy. If your worm farm begins to smell, you are probably overfeeding your worms. If you find it does smell, place shredded newspaper to the entire surface area and withhold food scraps for 1 week. After a week, recommence regular feeding routines. It will take about 3 to 6 months for this top tray to become full. The worms, as they eat, will excrete waste, which we call castings. The castings will fill up the top and middle trays to the degree that the worms will move freely between the 2 trays. These castings are a soil conditioner, and your soil and plants will love them. Every week, flush your worm farm with water by tipping 2 litres of water under your worm blanket on the top tray. Ensure the tap is open before you do this. Placing the bucket under the tap, you can collect all the worm juice that drains out. It is good to drain the water from the bottom of the worm farm each week. Water stored here can begin to smell over time. Worm juice can be diluted 1 to 10 with water, and it becomes a great source of nutrients for your garden. Repeating this process over a 3 to 4 month period will result in the bottom tray full of liquid waste, a middle tray full of castings, and a top tray with breeding working worms. At this point, you have a fully operating worm farm, and you can enjoy all the benefits of recycling your food scraps. In Australia, we generate over 43.8 tonnes of waste a year, this increasing in parallel to our growing population. Do your part for our environment and start a worm farm today. To purchase any of these products used in this video, visit www.backyardinabox.com.au.